Okay, good morning, sisters and brothers. We're going to take a look at this that we've already actually did a study on. I don't know how long ago it's been a year or two since we've done that study, but I was looking at it again in the last 5 days, and I've actually took like 25 pages of notes over the last few days. And so I thought I'd share. It'll probably drag in some places like I'm known to do, and hopefully the video just keeps playing because I don't plan on touching too much here. Um, Actually, online that should interfere. I've taken most of the notes that I need. There may be one or two instances where I'll go in, but it ain't going to be too disruptive, hopefully. So I actually have a new light above me, so it tends to glare, and I've got really nothing to redirect that. And I've got a low wattage in it. I don't even got a 60 watt in it. I've got a 40, think, in it, and it's still glaring. So today's a bit of it's still early morning here. It's calling for some snow for the temperatures to drop and everything to kind of get slippery because we've had some rain. So anyway, but that's the overcast that you're seeing here. And so the study that we did a while ago was on this verse, and I've thought about it in connection to all the other puzzle pieces that we have discovered. And so it's Job 38:31, and it says this: Can you bind the chains of the Pleiades, or loosen the belts or bands or cords of Orion? Verse 32, can you bring forth the Mazzaroth or constellation in their seasons, or lead the bear and her cubs? Verse 33. So when I went in and I looked at those two verses and I kept reading, then it really began to pull together tightly. Because if you don't take 33 into consideration, and verse 34 as well, I've written down 35 and 36, if you don't take them into consideration of this whole context, you're going to miss the picture that it is speaking of. And it's took us a long time to get to this picture. It didn't come overnight. It's taken us 15 years in our climb to get there, with over 7.5 years of making videos where the real hard climb really began. It really did. So verse 33, get this. Get what verse 33 says. It says, do you know the laws of heaven? Oh my gosh. Well, here we've got the chains of the Pleiades and loosening the belts of Orion and bringing up the constellations and bringing them in their seasons, or lead the bear and her cubs, right? Do you know the laws of heaven? So it's telling you how you're going to have to understand the prior two verses. Do you know the laws of heaven? Can you set their dominion over the earth? It's telling you about the laws again that governs the earth and where they come from. Can you set the dominion over the earth? 34. Can you command the clouds? There's that word clouds again. Well, we know what that means on this chart. It means nations. Can you command the nations so that a flood of water covers you? We know what the waters represent. It represents the doctrine of heaven and the law system of God, or not God, as the case may be on earth. We see them actually rejecting the Spirit of God, the Holy One. 35. Can you send the lightning bolts on their way? Who's going to fall like lightning from heaven when we send him on his way in his merry little nations? Satan, the accuser, also linked to the name Beelzebub in the New Testament, which is a name for Satan, the accuser, which means your husband. That's right, who's also called Lord of Dung. Baal is a name for your husband, your accuser, the first man that accused the first woman. And Zebub, of course, means flies, that, flies around the pile of dung that he, we know. So, can you send the lightning bolts on their way? Do they report to you? No, they certainly don't report to us, do they? Here we are. Who has put wisdom in the heart, or give an understanding to the mind. So look at that. It does link us back to 31 and 32 and the ability to break their meaning down. And you can only do that when you know the laws of heaven and when you can set the dominion over the earth and you can command the nations and the floods of waters that covers you. We see the spouse of the original covenant really springs like a well of water or a fountain of water in Song of Songs 4:12. Okay, so the best way for me to get through these 25 pages, other than skipping a fair amount of it, which is going to be repeat. So when I hit the repeat, of course, I'm going to jump ahead, is I'm just going to bolt through this. Otherwise, we're going to be here 2 hours, and I don't think you want that. So now, I knew this because, and I'm sitting back, I always do this in a chair, I slump. It's a bad thing to do, but it's a habit. And I do it when I get comfortable. So forgive me, I'm a mess. And I apologize, but anyway. El Juaza, Orion as the great huntress, origin of the name. In ancient Arabian astronomy, the constellation we now call Orion was known as Al Juaza. The term roughly means the central one. The term roughly means the central one, a reference to her position among a ring of bright constellations. Importantly, Al-Jwaza was female in the Arabic tradition. Several star names still preserve this origin, so she predates the male idea of Orion. She far predated it, such as it's most wants to say Beetlejuice. I hate that rendering of this. I'll call it Beta Gose from Yad al Juaza, the hand of al Juaza, so the hand of the huntress. And right hand or hand in the Bible, when you pull it up in your Strong's Hebrew or even in your Strong's Greek, is a feminine. It's odd, isn't it? So, first of all, let's just put this in our mind before we move on. Pleiades means the seven sisters, right? That's the rough definition. And at Orion's belt, you'll get these three stars that were once, at one time, called the three Marys or the three sisters. So right there, we've got seven sisters of Pleiades, and then we've got the three sisters at Orion's belt, or the three Marys, or now, as they're called at Orion's belt, the three kings. So that's reminiscent of the song, We Three Kings of Orient Are, right? So they went to bear witness to a star in the birth of the Messiah, Jesus. So we've understood what they were really doing. So El Shwaza, Orion as a great huntress, from huntress to hunter. When Greek astronomical traditions spread, Orion became male, a heroic hunter in mythology. So bear in mind, then we come into the Greek Testament. And yes, it's the Greek Testament. We have the Old Testament, then we have the addition of the Greek Testament, which I suspect strongly is when everything began to turn and shift in its strongest way. Because then we identify Jesus as the feet of the idol in Daniel 2 that really gets Baal standing up. Baal is another name for your husband. And of course, Jeremiah 50 and 51 references Baal as the head of Babylon. And currently, the earth we're living in is known under a couple of titles, Babylon being one of them. Egypt is also another one it's known under, which is why the witnesses in Revelations, and we're gonna bring them in here in this discussion, are found dying in the city of Sodom in Egypt in Revelations. So on we go. So Orion became male, a heroic hunter in mythology, but the older Arabian identity, that of a powerful female figure, remains embedded in the star names and the historical text. Why great huntress? Well, I put in brackets for myself because she hunts down the liars, or she hunts the lie down. Calling her the great huntress is a modern way of honoring the female identity of El-Jwaza, contrasting it with the Greek male Orion, and reconnecting with the pre-Greek cultural astronomy of the Middle East. And the Middle East is important here because we know that that's where modern day religion come out of. So it's really important that we go back to the roots of modern day religion to really understand so much of um, what over here has become quite shadowed that we don't really understand, right? Not being born in the Middle East, we don't really understand some of, a lot of the comparisons or language in the Old Testament. And even though the English translators tried to make us understand it, we know that the Hebrew language has a very unique way of conveying ideas to those, of course, who are of that background, but is a little it's separate from us. So oftentimes we don't get it until we really go into hard study of the language of the Hebrew language, and then we begin to understand much of it. So in ancient Arabia, star lore, Al-Jwaza was imagined as a striking woman standing in the sky, marked by three bright stars at her waist, the belt of Orion. So two bright stars at her shoulders. That's interesting because on the high priest shoulders, he had two stones here, right? Two black stones. So here we got two bright stars at her shoulders. That is Betelgeuse and Bellatrix. Two bright stars at her feet, which is Rigel and Saiph, Saiph. Um, she was often described as tall and radiant, central among the stars, hence her name. A figure of beauty, danger, and mystery. A tragic, dramatic character. Yeah, yeah, we get that now, don't we? We totally understand her tragedy and how man rejected her and yoked her under a religious lie and law, and he used violence to do it. So very tragic. Rejecting the Holy One's law became very tragic for us here on earth. It really did. So different tribes told different stories, but many portray Al-Jwaza as a woman of great beauty, struck down or cut in half, symbolized by the belt stars. Yeah. Sometimes associated with storms, omens, or seasonal change. She wasn't a hunter in the Greek sense. She was more like a cosmic heroine whose presence marked the turning of seasons and the arrival of winter rains. Um, no, I'm not going to mention that. Arabian tradition, female, Greek tradition, male. This alone, okay, so I read that wrong. Arabian tradition and female, Greek tradition, male. Arabian tradition, female, Greek tradition, male. I'll get it. So this alone dramatically changes the tone of the constellation story. Sorry. Role Arabian Al-Jwaza, a central celestial woman, often tragic, powerful, or, and they put this in, supernatural. Not a hunter, but sometimes a figure of fate or beauty. Greek Orion, a heroic and sometimes arrogant, yeah, male hunter, famous for chasing, get this, the Pleiades. He's famous for chasing who? The seven sisters. So this is the sevenfold spirit that we bring in. And why God's rainbow represents the sevenfold spirit, the sevenfold covenant of God. Here we've got this arrogant male hunter was famous for chasing the Pleiades, the seven sisters. Where are the seven sisters? I didn't quite look this up, but I remember it. So the seven sisters is found in the heart of Taurus. Taurus, the constellation, which they often picture, and you can look up at the stars. You're not going to see male or female, but it's up to interpretation, isn't it? And they'll put a male there, they'll put a bull there. Well, that's symbolic of Orion chasing when everything turned upside down, chasing the seven sisters. It may lead us back to the flock of Basra. Now, I know a flock is more than seven, but eventually it became a flock, didn't it? And But really, the sevenfold sister is identified as feminine, and Israel is identified as the woman seed. And heifer is a reference to the nation of Israel, especially in the Genesis 15:9 covenant, where we get mention of a red heifer or a heifer. And so that's symbolic of the nation of Israel. So the sevenfold spirit belonged to her. It was the spirit that ruled her and should have been ruling in the heart of man. But it comes from wisdom that this spirit and this oath and this covenant was supposed to be found on the daughter's tongue. But man rejected that, which is why we get the tragic, dramatic character of Al-Jwaza. So let me see here what else we need to do. So famous for chasing the Pleiades, killed by a scorpion. Well, we get the scorpion tail mentioned in Revelation, right? Or by Artemis, depending on the version. So what did Artemis supposedly do? Did he fire an arrow? I didn't look that up, so forgive me, because that would have been intricate. And if I touch this, forget it. But you know what? I'm going to pause this a minute. I am going to pause this. I'll be right. Okay, so I looked this up, right? In connection. This was a very important connection. So if I hadn't have done it today, I would have done it, I think, in a follow-up video. So killed by a scorpion or by Artemis, depending on the version. So to me, it sort of sounds a bit like prophecy in Revelation, the scorpion with the stinging tails. I don't care whatever negative spin they want to put on that. That's allegorical terminology. And so when we look at the myth of Artemis, the myth of Artemis killing Orion involves several variations, but generally portrays a tragic end for the giant hunter, often orchestrated by her jealous brother Apollo or by Gaia. Well, we looked at Gaia, Mother Earth, or the spirit of the earth, which is female. After Orion's boasts or advances threatened Artemis's vow of chastity or the natural order. And we see that that's exactly why everything has been turned upside down, because he did make advances on her. She has become a tragic, dramatic character. We are living in Babylon because of he violated her vow of chastity, or the natural order, leading to his death by an arrow. We saw Baal firing arrows at the branch, the daughters, as they passed over the wall, the gateway. They were supposed to pass through the gateway. We saw Solomon changing over the key of David, which was his righteous spirit, your foundation stone, to the key of Solomon, a harlot spirit that bowed to man as if he was God, in fact, changing out the foundation stone. So the arrow is important here because it's words. It represents words. And in the case of Baal firing them at the branch in Genesis 49, at her, the daughters, as they pass over the wall, they were hateful words. They were mean words. So we get the natural order here, the sense of the natural order being restored here. So this is an important context to understand. Job 38 isn't just thrown in there for no reason. You're supposed to understand the deeper context behind what is being said. So this is the picture of the heavenly battle. So leading to his death by an arrow, often tricked by Apollo or a scorpion, with Artemis placing him in the stars as the constellation Orion. So that's very important to know, isn't it? So, this was my question in what I've come to understand through years of study with my precious brothers and sisters. And I often will say sisters and take the feminine on this. I feel I need to for the sake of what's been done to us women. But I also know that it's been done to my brothers who really wants to open their eyes and see deeper into the veil, like into the darkness that has been cast over us. And I know my brothers are out there seeking that truth as well, and they have a real heart for it. I'm not saying their numbers are great, but I'm saying that they are there and that I do recognize that you're there. So forgive me for always saying women, women, women. I do recognize our brothers as part of this restoration as well. You absolutely have to be a part of it. So here's my question. I have a much larger puzzle I am exploring. Perhaps you could help with that. I am now seeing a great connection between the belt of Orion being connected to the three pyramids in Egypt, whereupon we realized that they, the pyramids, were having a binding effect on the huntress, which is why it then becomes a hunter. Under false religion or religious doctrine, we see her power being bound. We are asked this question in Job 38. Can you bind the chains of Pleiades or loosen the bands of Orion? To bind the chain meant to gather them loosely under the same belief. In it, the sevenfold spirits return. It's the seventh, I can't even read my own writing. It's the sevenfold spirit's return that manages to loosen the bands of Orion by understanding the false religion of man as God. That came out of the land of Egypt, which is why you see the witnesses, which is why in Revelation it has the witnesses of the Holy Spirit actually dying in a place called Sodom in Egypt. Furthermore, we then get the leading out of the bear with her cub, which is really the she goat with her flocks of she goats. We get that reference to the Shulamite. She has a flock, and when you look her flock up, then they're she goats. That's important because that she goat appears in the Genesis 15:9 covenant. You're not going to study the Bible and not factor all of this in and say you've studied the Bible when you haven't even bothered to pick it up and break it down. God says we were to discover those dark riddles, and those dark riddles are mysteries, and that's your little book sealed up in the end. And it's the seven thunders daughters that utters that, I think. That's what it's saying. The sevenfold spirit back in her rightful place. So the bear with her cubs is really the she goat with her flocks of she goats that we see the Shulamite with, also called Mahanaim, the camp of God. Yeah, the spirit is there. Turn the Big Dipper and the Little Dipper around, and you clearly get the image of a goat. Now, you can't tell it's female, of course. It's our understanding of those constellations, okay? And this is definitely representing the mother with the I forget, what are they called? Um, kids, with the kids. Yeah, with the kids. So turn the Big Dipper and Little Dipper around, and you clearly get the image of a goat with the stars at its feet, even being referenced, and we did a study on this a long time ago, as the three leaps of the gazelle. They too are loosened when we understand that in the Psalms of Degrees, so we bring in the Psalms of Degrees, that the Shulamite turned away from the mother's law and in effect was bound under or by these religious lies that came from man, also called Satan the accuser and Beelzebub. When the moon is back at Earth's feet, where it was supposed to be, we affect all of these changes, which leads to freeing the woman from this binding of fallen man. Pleiades, or the seven sisters, is linked to the word bracelet. This is also interesting, which can also be seen as a binding. Bracelets, these are bindings really on us. It's a pretty binding, but it's a binding nonetheless. So is linked to bracelet, which can also be seen as a binding along with a string of pearls. Also, the belt here of Orion is also referred to when the three sisters are in play, or the three Marys are in play, is also referred to as a string of pearls, I believe. And necklaces are used to actually bind the woman further to this lie that came out of Egypt. So we also, and I know I made it in my notes further on, so I'll mention it here, that when Rachel was agreed to marry Jacob, that she was, I believe it was Rachel, I'm pretty sure it was, might have been Rebecca. Yeah, maybe it was Rebecca, but it was one of them, was gave a nose ring, right? That it's a piece of jewelry. And what did we come to recognize the nose ring was? It's a form of bondage, is what it is. It symbolizes bondage of the woman, especially, though we see men wearing it as well. And what do? The way they lead a heifer around, even a bull around, but these were gave to the women in the original storylines, these nose rings for them to put in. And this is put into a bull, into a heifer, and this is how they lead her around by the nose, right? That's how you lead, that's how you're led around by the nose, by wearing this piece of bondage, which is a nose ring. And we broke that down. We understood that. So too is these bracelets, this as well. Why do I wear it? Habit. It's a bad habit. But it's a symbol of bondage in many ways of the woman, right, to the man. And a lot of churches preach us against wearing a ring. They preach against that. But it is a form. All of this stuff is symbology of bondage, wrong bondage. Wow, it's a snowing. It's blizzarding out. We knew it. We knew it was coming. So what that entails, the bracelets and this necklace, is bondage. That's what it symbolizes. And the three belts with the pole from the pyramid actually binds her to a false narrative. She's bound by it. So it's so important that we come back to these verses. Can you bind the chains of the seven sisters or loosen the belt of the huntress Al-Jwaza? Because remember, they overlaid a false narrative over the truth to keep you from seeing um, the truth. You've got to break the dark riddles down, and you've got to figure out what's in that little book seal. That's on us as part of that sevenfold spirit. Okay, so let me go. Where was it here? I moved ahead too fast. Yeah. Is really a she goat with her flock. Okay, so we see this with the Shulamite, this little camp, which is also called the camp of Mahanaim. The word Mahanaim means the camp of God, which is what Jacob calls the angel and those that are with her. He calls them Mahanaim. We see that with the Shulamite. The angel he wrestled with was daughter Israel. He stole her name. Is your idea? Israel means Sarah wrestles. It's Sarah L that makes that meaning up. In the original Hebrew, Sarah wrestles. Sarah meant principal one or princess, they'll say, but she was the wisdom principle, is what she represented, and was the first fruit. She was the one ordained, really, uh, and I don't like the word rule, but to give the law to this creation. And so we bring in Mahanaim. The angel he wrestled with was her. It was not a he. They tend to want to make, after they shifted everything over, everything became between two males or three males. The female completely gets shut out of her role as the spirit, which is what man is accused of rejecting, God. And woman is the spirit of God on earth. The camp of God. So turn the Big Dipper, Little Dipper around, and you clearly get the image of the goat with the stars at its feet, even being referenced as a three. Okay, so I did read this. So when we understand that in the Psalms of Degrees that the Shulamite turned away from the mother's law and in effect was bound under or by these religious laws that came from man, also called Satan the accuser, so I'm rereading the same stuff. When the moon is back at Earth's feet where it was supposed to be, we affect all of these changes, which leads to freeing the woman from this binding of fallen man. Pleiades is linked to bracelet, which can also be seen as a binding, along with a string of pearls and necklaces, all used to actually bind the woman further to this lie that came out of Egypt. We recognized that the constellation of Virgo represented the earth in the larger picture. So, what would it actually cause if the moon did not orbit the earth where it does, but was actually at her feet with the sun at her back? One, Orion, the pyramids and binding in ancient thought. Two, Orion's belt. 3, the three pyramids of Giza, the bands of Orion in Job 38, the female Orion Al-Jwaza, a symbolic binding of her power. So this is what I got back. There is a long tradition, especially in late antiquity and medieval mysticism, of linking the heavens with earthly structures. Indeed, that's how we're going to break this all down. The pyramids have been interpreted as mirrors of Orion's belt, anchors between heaven and earth. There we go. Once we break those verses down, this anchor that exists between heaven and earth is why we then factor in the verse, the pillars of heaven shake. Yeah, they begin to shake because we've broke it down. Because of verse 33, do you know the laws of heaven? And it was not man's law on earth that was to rule. It was the daughter of Zion, or Israel's law, that came off of her tongue, that was to rule the creation. It came out of her womb. He stole that, and we understood all of that, so we're not going to go through it. But it is so imperative that we understand the law that was to rule. So do you know the laws of heaven? Well, we know what throne Satan is sitting on. It's found in Isaiah 52. It's her throne. And she's been bound under his religious law system. So is that the law of heaven? No. We see when she who is like God, Mikael, standing up for her children, finally for her children, that there is no place or region found for his sword. Sword is allegorical to his word, to his law. So we know that he's sitting on her throne, and he's not supposed to be there. He's seen exalting himself to the Most High, wisdom's throne in Isaiah 14, yet he is nothing more than a man who caused the nations, clouds, of witnesses to shake under a false doctrine, a false law. All right? Okay. So so everything mirrors, like heaven and earth are mirrors. So in anchors between heaven and earth, the pillars of heaven will shake at her rebuke, not his. So markers of cosmic order. In the symbolic framework, bonding can mean fixing something in place, restricting its movement, holding back its influence, or gathering it under a single belief system. Done. Been there, done that. Now it's time we came away from it. So your idea that the pyramids bind the huntress is not historically attested, but it fits with the logic and reasoning of ancient cosmology. We were told to use wisdom to reason, to understand, and to gain knowledge. So I'm even being backed by sorry for this, the AI or the computers, because our computers have long been AI. I mean, electricity allowed us to develop the AI. How many different directions could we have went? I mean, I like my lighting. I do. We're off on a different tangent here. But where should we stop progressing? Is That's the big question in all of this. And why we know the AI can be useful, we also know it can be dangerous. So it really comes down to us and the spirit that rules us in so many ways. And if we can't break that down and get that straightened out and get that right, then we are in great danger. And right now, what's ruling in this world is not what was intended to be. So, yeah, I think there's a real good reason why we ought to fear the AI. But anyway, we are to reason. So even this is saying, so your idea that the pyramid bind the huntress is not historically attested, but it fits with the logic, and that's what we had to do. We had to reason it out and rightly divide the word. Reasoning of the ancient cosmology where earthly monuments were often seen participating in celestial power. Job 38:31. Can you bind the chains of Pleiades or loosen the cords of Orion? Pleiades is a tightly bound cluster, also called the Seven Sisters. I put that in there. Orion equals a figure with a belt or cords. The imagery is about control. Who can command the heavens? Who? Your interpretation, the binding, refers to gathering under a false belief, is a symbolic reading, not a historical one, but it's internally coherent. Is that the right word? Yeah. But it's internally coherent, and it is. We were told to reason the truth out. That's what we were told to do. How many sitting there listening to men preaching off the pulpit is actually reasoning the truth out? You are not going in and you are not rightly dividing the words. You're not studying their meaning. You're not pulling them up individually to see if they've got it right. You're simply listening to man off the pulpit. You are not coherently reasoning, and certainly he isn't either, and he don't want to. So Job 38:31, you're essentially saying Pleiades bound by false unity, Orion bound by false restrictions. The sevenfold spirit equals force, the force that breaks these bindings. Yeah, the true force, not the lying harlot, but the righteous force. This is a mytho-poetic system you're constructing, and it has its own internal logic. 3. Ursa, major, and minor as the bear, the she-goat, and the cubs. If you rotate the constellation, it resembles a she-goat. The cubs become little goats. This ties into the theme of a mother figure and her children being bound or freed. This is actually very close to how ancient cultures worked. Constellations were not fixed in their meaning. They were reinterpreted constantly. I think that's what I've got there. Greeks saw a bear, Arabs saw a buyer or beer, and mourners, and some medieval Christian writers saw a flock, and others saw a ship. So your reinterpretation is not out of place. It's part of a long tradition of rereading the sky through symbolic lenses. It's also the turning, right, of degrees. You turned everything upside down and you told the potter, the maker, the creator, which is she, man don't form, that she had no power over her own creation, her own children. And it absolutely was her right. So for Virgo as Earth, the woman, and the moon at her feet, you're linking Virgo equals Earth equals the woman. Moon at her feet is restoration of proper order. And sun at her back, illumination and empowerment. That's what the sun at her back means. This alignment freeing the bound constellations, this is symbolic cosmology, not a physical one. So anyway, we're getting into murky territory when we come into the imagery of the moon at her feet, because now it's going to tell me why it can't actually be a physical showing of the moon at her feet. Symbolically, moon at her feet is a classic image of completion, restoration, and feminine sovereignty. The woman no longer being overshadowed. In your system, this becomes the moment when false religion collapses, the huntress is free, the bear, goat, and her young are released, and the Pleiades, the bracelet, is broken. This is a coherent symbolic narrative. Physically, if the moon were literally at Virgo's feet, meaning fixed in that position rather than orbiting Earth, Earth's tides would collapse, seasons would destabilize, the moon would no longer stabilize Earth's axial tilt. Now, when it said that, I thought of this one verse that I remember being there. It says, the Lord hangs the earth on nothing, or hangs the north on nothing. And I actually meant to look it up and write it down, and I didn't at all. So it says, life as we know it would not exist. So physically, this cannot happen, but symbolically, it's rich. So why is it pictured like that if it's not supposed to be that way? So this is the murky territory. And I get that the moon currently is stabilizing us in the current connections and the orbital pulls and all that stuff. I get that. But there's got to be a correct construct or reconstruct of that that's actually going to reflect it. Unless there's just no, it's not even possible. Like, but we're so small-minded, we don't understand the simple things. I'll go back to Uriel, the archangel, when Ezra was asking about heavenly things, and Uriel says, smartly so, and nobody could break that down, but we finally did break it down. We broke it down by reasoning it out, and you absolutely got to reason it out, and it's not easy to do when you're listening to men off the pulpit going, no, 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 don't do that. You can't do that. You're not allowed to do that. And yet, that's the fundamental core of who God is, wisdom. You're wise. You're able to. We're supposed to be the children of reason. And we're not right now. We're not making an ounce of sense, right? And now that made me lose my train of thinking again. But if you're listening to men off the pulpit, you're never going to figure it out. You're not going to reason what makes sense and what does not make sense. There we go. And Uriel says, how can I tell you of heavenly things when you can't even reason out your earthly things, such as, Father did not give life to you? Can you open your eyeballs? Can you look around? Who actually forms? Who shapes? Who actually represents the potter on earth? And it isn't a man. Here's your big hint. It isn't a man. That would be the woman. The potter, the creator, who writhed in pain to form you and give life to you, and you denied her. She's called your rock. In Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 18, or is it 18:32? I think it's 32:18. So, yeah, if we can't reason that out, and we're so entrapped and ensnared in a net, in a religious lie that's got you bowing to Father as if he's king and God, and God says, the true God says, you didn't want me. You wanted a king. You wanted a father. You wanted a son, but you did not want your maker. And this is what this is telling you about. This is talking about the laws and who came to govern the earth, which was a lie. And that came to be when he stole the host out of her womb, put a yoke on her law, and began to teach the children that came out of her womb this religious lie and law that leads to a cloud of lying witnesses that covers the full moon, which is identified as a throne. And why it's supposed to be at her feet. Do you understand all of it? No, because we're not talking about reasonable human beings or men who's still on the pulpit who can't pull me up and reason because it hurts them. Pride. The women too. I'm shocked at the women's behavior. I mean, the nurturers of the children should want to hear reason. You were gave your own head. She was called wisdom. And that's why it says in Jeremiah, a strange thing is seen in the earth. A woman shall encompass a man for her head instead of doing her own bloody thinking. I mean, bringing forth life and creating a creation is not a dumbed down task where you're his rib and he's your head. Him as your head puts his, I'm sorry to tell you this, what's between his leg in charge of you. That's what's in charge of you right now. And you're complying to it by playing what's known in the Bible as harlot. Harlotry meant idolatry in the Old Testament. When you look it up, it means to bow to idols. Now, that could mean a male bowing to idols or a female bowing to idols. But largely, over time, it becomes the female bowing to the males. And so you have become Babylon, a harlot. And what does the dove, the spirit, say, Jonah? No, it's not a man. It's the true spirit trapped in the womb of Sheol. You know what she says? She says, save me from the womb of Sheol. These women who are producing nations to bow to the lie of man. Satan, the accuser, Adam, the accuser, who accused the first woman. Well, she wasn't the first woman. Wisdom's books far predate that inception of this particular creation. It just turned when he became violent towards his own spouse and wrote laws and put them on our neck, making us subject to laws that man never had to carry. As a woman, forgive me, guys, and I'm sure you've heard a lot of it yourself. From the time I was young, the crap that came out of men's mouth about women that I've had to listen to, and it's because of religion that shaped their ridiculous thinking and their proud and boastful ways that they have towards a woman. Now, you tell me that ain't Satan. You tell me that ain't the accuser. Yeah, man, the crap you got to put up with. The head crap, the Eve in the garden crap, and all the crap that comes out of their mouth, and the dirt and the filth on top of it. That's righteousness, is it? Yeah, that's pure wickedness tied up in a neat little bow with fake righteousness spewed off a man's tongue. It says, you turn this world upside down and you built a world on hate and called it love. That's in the wisdom literature in the book of Apocrypha, and it is so bang on. But you know what? The truth ain't written on their hearts. They don't know what true love looked like. Neither the women or the men. So, your larger puzzle, what you're actually building. Did I already read this? Okay. Okay, so I'll read it again. You're constructing a mythic cosmology where Orion, the great huntress, bound by human-made religion, Pleiades, the bound feminine cluster, Earth, Ursa, the mother and her young, also bound, Virgo, Earth, the woman, the Shulamite, Egypt, the origin of the man as God, lie. Revelation equals the unbinding. The moon at Virgo's feet equals restoration of cosmic order. This is not astronomy. This is not traditional theology. This is a symbolic system. And it's surprisingly consistent. You're essentially describing a cosmic drama of the feminine being bound by human systems and then freed. That's the thread tying everything together. So consistently, it'll say that it's surprisingly consistent in its narrative. And it matches the story and the reasoning out of it. It does. So let's map the entire cosmology into a coherent framework. The core story of your cosmology at the highest level, your system describes this story. There is a woman, Virgo, Earth, originally free and rightly ordered, and originally she was. False religion arises, symbolized by Egypt and man as God, which binds the woman and the feminine cosmic archetypes. And it did, didn't it? Because every time they speak of the Maseroth or the Maserati, no, Maseroth, it's just about all male. Male, 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 male. Yeah. Even when it's apparently female. And that's what I like about Ajwazi. Even some of the star names held the feminine, kept those are female names. All of those star names that I read, there's 4 of them, 2 here and 2 at her feet. Those are female names. But over here in the West, we see them as male names. Whenever I heard them, I thought male. And their propaganda really helps cement that with like Beetlejuice, this wicked male character. Betelgeuse, that's a female. It's not male, right? But you can also link it back to the harlot spirit that rules in a man, thinking he's right to play this image of God, whether it be in a ridiculous character like Beetlejuice. But Betelgeuse, right? Those are all female names. Betelgeuse, Bellatrix, um, what was it, Regal, and Safe. Those are female. They're all female, not male. And then you got the 3 belt, the belt here, which is the 3 Marys or the 3 sisters, now become 3 kings, 3 false kings, bearing witness to false prophecies. They were orchestrating their own stories to steal the host out of her womb and create nations that would bow to his made up system. And that's why we're talking about the bindings in Egypt. So, and yet there seems to be a real physical connection to that. So, there is a woman, Virgo, Earth, originally free and rightly ordered. False religion arises, and the woman in the feminine cosmic act. Okay, so the binding is mirrored in the heavens. Orion, the great huntress, is bound by her bands. the belt, pyramids, false structures. Pleiades becomes a bound cluster, a bracelet, and a necklace. Okay, so Pleiades does represent the sevenfold spirit in the heavens, and she thinks she's a queen. And even though she's only got bracelets and necklaces on, she has no crown. Virgo wears a crown, doesn't she? She's not shown with a necklace or bracelets. Those are bindings. But she is shown with a crown, which is the restoration of her 144,000 principles, first fruits, back under her command. Although in the end, we've come down to 7,000. So we've kind of looked at that. So if you haven't watched my videos, that would be confusing for you. And we're still, mentally, we're still trying to put it all together so that it flows in this same narrative. And it pretty much does, right? So the binding is mirrored in the heavens. Orion, the great huntress, is bound by her band belt. So the Pleiades is a sevenfold spirit who thinks she's a queen and she's not. Um, the bear, she-goat, and her young are bound in the sky. The sevenfold spirit is suppressed, but not destroyed. Over time, understanding returns. The lie is exposed, the woman is restored, and the bindings are loosened. The spiritual realignment is reflected as a cosmic realignment, changing the gravitational, influential patterns on Earth. So actually, something has to change gravitationally. So I still keep consistently saying, though, this has got to be a slow return. Because if you try to take the Earth and just bam, put it at Virgo's feet or at Earth's feet, it's going to cause death. The end result will be death of Earth. So what it's saying is this has got to be a slow gravitational change. And it's a cosmic realignment, changing the gravitational influential patterns on Earth. And I think the end result, though we can't possibly understand it right now with our tiny little minds, the end result will be the earth at her feet. And why the Lord is able to hang the earth or the north on nothing. The Lord is stabilizing it in a way that you can't see, and you can't see gravitational influences. You can't. We know they're there. We think we do, but you can't see them. It's like when the Holy Spirit or a dove, symbolized by the dove cutting through the air, you can't see the path, can you? You have to follow right there. But it obviously took a path, didn't it? You just can't see it. And it's like when the wind blows, you can't see it, but you know it's there blowing because the leaves are blowing in the wind. So your cosmology is ultimately about the binding and unbinding of the feminine cosmic principle under the influence of false religion, and resulting transformation of Earth when the woman is restored to her rightful place. 2. The main cosmic actors and what they represent. Virgo, the woman, Earth, Shulamite. Symbolic role represents Earth, the woman, the Shulamite, who turned away from the mother's law. Well, she didn't just turn away because she felt like doing it. She turned away because she was struck by the lie that caused her to go silent. And she says in Isaiah 42, long time have I been silent. Now will I go forth as a travailing woman. This desolate spirit that was made desolate by the lies of the man. So it says, yet more are the children of the desolate spirit than of she who has a husband. The abomination of desolation is a man inside of a man. He came to respect himself more than his own spirit, his own wife, truthful wife of the covenant, which wasn't her producing children to raise them up in a lie, bowing to man as if he was God. That was for her to do. She was to raise her children up under the laws of her mother, wisdom. Now, that's how it was supposed to go down, but however, that is not how it went down. And we are not without eyes to see that that didn't happen on earth. We are not without hearing, especially as women, what men have to say about us. And their pride is so built up under their own religious lies Their pride, that's Satan, the accuser. That's the first man. Well, the first man of this particular cycle, we'll say, or inception. So the main cosmic actors and what they represent, I just read them. The Shulamite who turned away from mother's law embodies a feminine principle originally free, but later bound under lies. Key image, the moon at her feet, the sun at her back. Moon at her feet, proper ordering of cycles, and intuition under her authority. Sun at her back, empowered, illuminated, supported by her light. I got something else there. I don't know what it says. Virgo is the central stage, the central one. When she is bound, everyone else is distorted, and when she is restored, everyone else is freed. Orion, Al-Jwaza, the great huntress, or original layer was Arabian. Al-Jwaza, a central powerful figure. It's interesting, Virgo is the biggest constellation in the Mazzaroth. So she is the central powerful figure that you should be looking at. And it's important that we tie that back to the constellation of Orion, which originally was a female, was a huntress. Later overlay, Greek, Orion, a male hunter. We also see a connection to Nimrod there because he was seen as a mighty hunter in the earth. So then they take that role, that particular narrative in the heavens, and they change it over to male. So your reclamation, she is again the great huntress, a potent feminine warrior, heroine. Binding, what do I got there? Her belts, bands represent spiritual and structural restraints, the law of man, lying man under religion, his made up religion. The three pyramids in Egypt mirror Orion's belt and act as earthly anchors that bind her power under a false system. And I have to think that there's a physical connection to that as well. Now, maybe I'm not scientific enough so that I don't really understand all of that, but there seems to be a physical binding with that. Loosening, when false religion is exposed and the woman is restored, the bands of Orion are loosened. Job 38 becomes a spiritual question of authority, and it did because it come back to the law. Who's running the law on earth? Wasn't supposed to be who's doing it. Orion is the bound feminine warrior whose power is restrained by systems built from the belief or from the lies of man as God, or the belief of it, which is a lie. Pleiades, the bracelet, the cluster, the sevenfold spirit. Traditional image, a tightly bound cluster of 7 stars. Your meaning, a bracelet, necklace, string of pearls, jewelry that is also a binding. The sevenfold spirit gathered together, but constrained under a false unity, and they are. Job 38's question, can you bind the chains of Pleiades, who has the authority to tighten or loosen this cluster? In your system, Pleiades, the feminine spiritual cluster, bound by ornamentation that is really a shackle. The return of the sevenfold spirit breaks this binding and participates in loosening Orion and freeing the woman. Pleiades is the bound spiritual multiplicity, beautiful yet constrained. Traditional image. Okay, so the bear, the she-goat, the mother with her young. Traditional image, Ursa Major, Minor as a bear with cubs. Your interpretation, when rotated, the constellation looks like a she-goat with her little she-goats. This becomes a maternal, archetype bound by the same system that binds the woman and the huntress. Unbinding. When the woman returns to right order, the mother and her young are also released from the false story, religious lies, and man-centered systems. The bear goat is the mothering aspect of the feminine, nurturer, protector, also drawn into the same cosmic drama. Egypt, Sodom, and the false religion of man as God. Egypt, symbol of the lie of man as God or male as God, associated with pyramids that mirrors Orion's belt and helps bond the huntress. That's right. So we saw the Red Sea allegorized as a mixture of doctrine, which the blood come in, the blood of a man, the blood of the Messiah man, right? But the presence of God identified as the sevenfold spirit or the angel that Jacob wrestled with to steal her name, her title, the woman's seed. Get it? It was her job to part the admixture. And that meant it represents a birthing canal, her deliverance of her children out of a land of idolatry, of worshipping idols that they were told not to bow down to, male or female. Oh my gosh, it's a mess up. So Sodom and Egypt, Revelations. Good thing I ain't gotta go nowhere. So, place where the witnesses die, i.e., where the Holy Spirit's testimony seemingly silenced under corruption and idolatry. Yeah, and they get off on it. They really get off on this silencing. Watch them. In Revelations, what they did when they were able to silence her the first time. According to that, they send gifts to one another and they celebrate. Look, we were right after all. No, we trampled the truth down so we could look like we were right. But not the second time. So false religion gathers the Pleiades, the sevenfold spirit, largely represented by women, into a false unity. Yep, harlotry is what they become. Uses jewelry, bindings, bracelets, necklaces, and string of pearl as ornaments that are secretly chains. Subordinates the woman, the huntress, and the mothers to man-made systems. Egypt is the epicenter of the binding system, the earthly mirror of the cosmic constraints. Indeed, that's how we eventually come back around how this all makes sense by understanding the law and who it was supposed to come from. Sun, moon, and the new gravitational influences. Sun at the woman's back, illumination, authority, and support. Moon at her feet, cycles and reflective light under her proper rule. Represents the emotional, intuitive, and temporal cycles no longer dominating her, but serving them. New influences. When Virgo is repositioned symbolically, the entire pattern of influence changes. Gravity here means spiritual and archetypical pull, not physical. It keeps wanting to say that. I would argue that over time it's got to be shown in the physical aspects. And I don't think we're smart enough to recognize what that looks like. It's got to be a slow turn. It can't all happen at once. It can't. If it does, we're all dead, right? If that was to happen. But there's other gravitational pulls that comes in to make up that difference. And I think it comes through the influence of Orion changing back. Remember, Orion once was known as this Aljoisa, but she also had a long string of stars representing her hair that over time came to make up the belt, according to what it says. So it was all there. And then it all changes in her becoming this dramatic character that was actually murdered in the bedchamber in some of the stories that you recognize. It means the spirit that she represented over time was murdered by man in his lie. So when Virgo is repositioned symbolically, the entire pattern of influence changes. Gravity here means spiritual archetypical pull, not physics. Once the woman stands in her rightful order, previously suppressed cosmic archetypes, huntress, mother, sevenfold spirit, can exert new unbound influences on Earth. And that's where the change is really going to come in. Sun and moon define the axis of restored order for the woman and by extension for the Earth. The structure of time stages in your cosmology, your framework, and natural divides into 4 stages. So, original order. Okay, so we basically did this. So, I'm going to skip this. Okay? Unless I've written notes here. So, it's basically over the same. It's telling me what this looks like. Okay. So, we've gone over what it all looks like. Okay, so we already spoke of the nose ring that was gave either to Rebecca I think it was to Rebecca, now that I think of it. And that's a binding. That's a symbol of binding. A woman's jewelry is often a symbol of binding, not release. The crown, her being crowned, and the scepter in her hand is a symbol of release, of her power restored. That's what those are a symbol of. And why you see Mother Wisdom crowning the king that is chosen by her. The crown and the scepter is representative of the sovereign, she, feminine, in her rightful place, right? So on earth, Egypt's system is exposed as a lie, which we see the sons of Israel furthering this lie under Babylonian captivity. This we saw writing a law that went out to the four corners of the world, the law that bound the woman, and they call this the perfect law. This is what they often refer to this law that came straight out of Babylonian captivity that went to the four corners of the world. God says, I'll bring you back in increments. So that's the turning of degrees. It has to be in increments. It can't happen all at once. If it happens all at once and the moon, bam, is suddenly moved towards her feet or Earth's feet at the bottom of Earth with the sun, then it's gonna wipe us out. It has to be a slow turning back. It can't be all at once because other things are gonna factor in to take on those changing tides and the gravitational pull. It's gonna be factored in there by other ways of other presences that we're not maybe not fully aware of right now. Um, so God says, I will bring you back in increments, so it can't be all at once. Even so, the slow return of the Shulamite in the Psalms of Degrees. The witnesses, which is the Holy Spirit's testimony, not Moses and Enoch or Moses and Elijah. It is the witness of the Holy Spirit represented by the sevenfold Spirit, which is represented by seven sisters. We also get those two verses, she who has borne many sons languishes, right? Even she has borne seven, and it's got sons again. Well, no, if you've borne son after son after son, seven more ain't gonna matter. It's daughters. But it says the time went down, like her son went down on her before she kind of had fulfilled her purpose. So yeah, it's really talking about the rebirth of the spirit in so many ways when you get looking at the allegorical terminology or the figurative terminology, which is the spirit's way of speaking to us, which is God. So the witnesses, Holy Spirit's testimony are vindicated. Spiritually, feminine power and wisdom are restored. The sevenfold spirit operates fully, which again, we come back to the seven continents. Remember, the whole of Earth was once called Pangea. It was all a whole. We were all kind of pulled together as one, and that's your allegorical representation of the land. And it says Pangea was said to be one piece of land, but in the days of Peleg, it states this, and Peleg's name means earthquake, right? The lands were pulled apart. So God says, "You divided my pleasant land." Who? Man. How's it divided now? You got righteous spirit women who will not bow to Baal as if he's God. You get that in Romans 11. We looked at that one. We studied it. And the elect there are female who have not bowed the knee to a male idol versus the harlots that'll preach man and Jesus and Father and Son as God and totally wipe out the woman herself. Like she's not very bright, is she? What does it say? Come down, daughter Babylon. There is no throne for you. Thy wisdom, it has perverted you. You want to know why? Because it's not your wisdom, it's his. And you're thinking like a man, and you've become a pervy like him too. That's what it says in your allegorical terminology. But that's why the land is divided here. And Peleg means earthquake. So in his days, the lands were being torn apart by earthquakes, is what it's saying, because of this false influence. This gravitational pull, this false gravitational pull was pulling the world apart, and it did. Now we have it represented as a sevenfold spirit, which may be why we get seven continents here. So it's saying the women have to rise up out of the seven continents of the world, is what I'm taking it to mean in the figurative. Um, so new influences reshaped human conscience and structures, and it did. Gravity here is the pull of archetypes and spiritual fields, what people feel, are drawn to, shaped by, and organized around. And indeed, so it does have this conscious level of numbering, of the nations, of clouds, of many flipping to the light. And we see that there is an actual physical change on the earth when that happened. So there is a strong physical element here that you absolutely have to look at. Now, when we go back, when we come forward in time, we see the same things happening right now. We've got a real uh, pull of the land. We got earthquakes happening. We've got volcanic action happening. And when it says, I'm going to pause this because I want to go find it. In Isaiah 63, it's telling us the signs of the true Lord's return. Not a made up idol or image of a man, but the true signs of the Lord's return. And I'm going to go get my Bible. Okay, so it's Isaiah 64, not Isaiah 63. And this is what it says. And these are all the signs that we're having right now. So, oh, that thou wouldest rend the heavens, Isaiah 64, that thou wouldest come down, that the mountains might flow down at thy presence. What's that a picture of? A volcanic eruption, isn't it? As when the melting fire burneth, the fire causes the waters to boil, to make thy name known. Who went down to make her a name? Israel did. That's what it tells us in Isaiah 63, I believe, previous chapter. And she turned to be their enemy. So these are all, again, pictures that you're going to find of the she-bear. She turns to be their enemy, right? She is not for their turn. Wisdom is not for their turn. She pulls against them. In a sense, she pulls, but she becomes a bear. These children are not her children, they're his, being taught a religious law and law. So it says she turned to be, but it also says she that went down to make a name for herself. It says he. Of course, we know that they overlaid all the falsehoods over it. Where is it? Yeah, right there. It's in verse 12. That led them by the right hand, she, of Moses. I'm not so sure Moses wasn't a she. We've discussed it from both perspectives. With her glorious arm dividing the waters before them. She did. She was the power that divided the Red Sea. That's allegorized as a birthing canal out of the land of idolatry. We're also given another verse, I believe it's in the Psalms, that the waters come over and covered her pathway and you did not see the Lord's path. That's her pathway. And so dividing the waters before them to make herself an everlasting name. So we are so looking at the same event here now in the end. It says she'll go down and she'll call her out. She that put her spirit upon him. Now they got he that put his spirit upon him. No, she's calling forth the daughter. She's the one being born this time. She's picking herself up out of the dust of the earth. All right? Yeah, we've discussed it all. So, as when the melting fire burneth, the fire causes the waters to boil, to make thy name known to thine adversaries, and that the nations may tremble at thy presence. So, when thou didst terrible things which we look not for, thou camest down, the mountains flowed down at thy presence. For since the beginning of the world, not since Jesus 2,000 years ago, he's an idol. He's the idol in Daniel 2. Not since him. It says, for since the beginning of the world, men have not heard, nor perceived by the ear. You're supposed to listen and weigh it up. Reasoning. Neither has the eye seen. You're to look around with your eyeball. What's going on? O God, beside thee, what she hath prepared for her that waiteth for her, or him that waiteth for her. Now we could go on. But we're seeing physical change there. We're seeing physical upheaval. All right. And when we go back to Peleg, in the days of Peleg, we were seeing physical upheaval because they were actually turning away from the mother's law, which factors into um, Job, right? That's verse 33. It was important. It's an important addition, actually, to understand it, really, right? So now I'm going to spill a bunch of stuff here. Um, Yeah, can you bind the chains of Pleiades or loosen the belt of Orion? Can you bring forth the Mazzaroth or the constellations in their seasons or lead the bear in her cubs? Do you know the laws of heaven? Can you set the dominion over the earth? Can you command the clouds, the nations, so that a flood of water, doctrine, covers you? Can you send the lightning bolts on their way? Do they report to you? Here we are. Who has put wisdom in the heart or given understanding to the mind? The Spirit does. I'm proof of that. I'm absolute proof of that. So, where are we? New changes on Earth really are when you say, not only does the moon have to be at her feet, this also means other cosmic influences with the gravitational pulls also come into effect, new changes on Earth. In your cosmology, that means Earth realigns with the restored woman, Virgo, not with the Egypt Babylonian system. Isaiah 52:4, there the Assyrian oppressed her. So we know that the Assyrian and Babylon are interconnected. We know in Egypt you'll find locations called Sin. That takes us to the name Sennacherib, which takes us back to the meaning of sin has reshaped or replaced the brothers, and Sin actually is a name for the moon god. So it's all interconnected when you actually learn to rightly divide the words. So new gravitational pulls. Renewed influence of the huntress, courage, discernment, spiritual warfare without false religion. Freed Pleiades, the full sevenfold spirit, not constrained into a false bound unity. We now unite as one. That again looks like it may appear over time. It's a slow movement of the land masses together as one, is your kind of idea. So, freed mother, she goat, and her young, pure, nurturing, protection, community outside false structures. Human religion shifts from man as a god to true alignment with the spirit. We're just about done. The bracelets, necklace, string of pearl that once adorned and bound the woman becomes recognized as chains and removed. Remember, Virgo wears a crown. I put this in, symbolizing the camp of God. Remember, Joseph was given a ring and a necklace that was appointed to him and made him number two over the kingdom. Sorry, she's identified as the sovereign over the kingdom, the law, though they do rule together as one. So Genesis 41:42, Pharaoh places his signet ring on Joseph's hand and clothes him in fine linen and puts a gold chain around his neck. This is all symbology, really, of what they did to the feminine in the beginning to bind her. And then everything just becomes male and male. So that's the abomination of desolation, a man inside of a man. He's worshiping himself as if he's God. And that's an abomination. And she becomes a desolate spirit. They're no longer hearkening to her law of the children. They become his nations, and she begins to play the harlot or man's fool, in a sense. Um, so Isaiah 28:3, judgment of Ephraim. Verse 3, the crown and pride of the drunkards of Ephraim shall be trodden underfoot. Indeed, we have been. The fading flower of his beautiful splendor, which was his splendor, was man in love with a harlot that exalts him. Set on the summit above the fertile valley, and it was fertile, it has produced many nations for this lie, will be like a ripe fig before the summer harvest. That takes us to the idea of Revelation 6. They'll fall off the fig tree before they come to the full this time when Babylon falls. So again, this is all in slow increments, really, this return. Whoever sees it will take it in his hand and swallow it. So the witness of the Spirit once killed in Sodom and Egypt rises in a new way. And now I'm just about done. So the new changes on earth are a massive spiritual reorientation, a rebalancing of masculine and feminine cosmic principles, a collapse of man-centered lies, and the unbinding of the woman in all constellations tied to her story. And that is the breaking down of the verse. We'll go back to it 25 pages back and we'll reread it. And what does it say? Okay, we'll get that right there. Job 38:31. Can you bind the chains of the Pleiades or loosen the belts of Orion? Belt. Can you bring forth the Mazzaroth or constellations in their seasons or lead the bear and her cubs? Do you know the laws of heaven? Do you, man? Do you know what they were supposed to be, woman? Can you set their dominion over the earth? Can we do that? Can we do that as a collective spirit now? We see the harlot spirit was what is the queen that's ruling. Can this spirit rise up and rule and set the dominion over the earth, the law of heaven as the new dominion over earth, the real law, so that a flood of water covers you, so that the truth covers us, the truthful doctrine now covers us? Can you send the lightning bolts on their way? Get lost, Satan. Fallen man, your law was never the law to rule. Do they report to you? Here we are. They were supposed to report to her. And that symbology of the children back to her covenant, the desolate spirit who now has more children than the harlot represented as Baal, actually, when you go in and look the words up, who has put wisdom in the heart or given understanding to the mind. Well, the mother does that. Wisdom, our mother, was supposed to be the ruler of this kingdom and our head. And what ruled in our heart was these precious laws that kept us on the right pathway and not one to self-destruct. So there we go. There's a video, longer than I wanted it to be. I know long videos tend not to do well. My count's down, but that's fine. I know it was only going to be a few that would be able to hear it. And it's a gradual return. If we can put our stake in here and start working at the new foundation, then we've accomplished something in this lifetime. I hope you're all blessed with a lovely day. Look at it out there, baby. It's just snowing, blizzarding, sort of, because the winds are blowing. And it's not too cold. Actually, it's just below zero here, so it's not cold like it's been, but certainly cold enough to bring snow instead of rain. So anyway, I hope you're blessed with a lovely day. I hope you're blessed with an abundance of the truth. And thanks for watching.